The full Nomad Capitalist experience is you're moving overseas to legally reduce your taxes and increase your personal freedom, and you're also getting a second passport to expand your options. And so we've recently had some clients come to us who were confused about the best second passport strategy and how that plays into their taxes. So today I'm going to break down 4 different options. Let me tell you the story of a gentleman who came to us. He said, I would like to give up my U.S. citizenship. Maybe now, maybe in the future, you tell me. Nothing personal, just business. I want to save as much money as possible. I understand that even as an American, I can move overseas and I can have some tax savings. I don't need the U.S. and I want to renounce and I want the maximum tax savings. I want to pay 0% overseas. Now, not everybody who renounces, myself included, does so for purely tax reasons. For a lot of us, there were very personal reasons that were number one. But here's a guy who says, I just want out for business reasons. No judgment there. But what he also said was, I don't want to be a sucker who pays for one of those citizenship by investment passports because it just seems wrong of me to make a donation in order to get out of the U.S. system. So what else can you offer me? So I want to break down the situation that he had. He was making, let's just flatten it to about $2 million a year, okay? $2 million a year in profit in his business. And so his tax bill, let's just put the tax here, his tax bill in the United States, if he were to stay, he was paying about $700,000. I'm making these numbers a little bit rounder than they are. If he were to give up his citizenship right away with a citizenship by investment passport, we've done case studies here with our team, had a number of folks who've gotten from soup to nuts passports in Caribbean citizenship countries in 5 or 6 months, all in, paperwork, processing, passport in hand, okay? He could theoretically go anywhere he wanted, give up U.S. citizenship. Now he can choose his tax rate wherever he lives. He can live in St. Kitts and Nevis, live in, with a few conditions, Antigua and Barbuda, and just have taxes at 0 right out of the box. Or he can choose to go to any other jurisdiction, tax-free, non-dom, lump sum, whatever else, and choose his tax rate. So theoretically, his tax gets reduced to 0. He'll have to migrate his company out of the U.S. He'll migrate himself out of the U.S. He saves $700,000 every single year. He can do that in about 6 months from now, because you can get the passport in hand, parallel process of setting up your renunciation appointment and doing your renunciation tax planning. Now, he said, hey, I think I have someone in my family tree. I can get citizenship. We call it CBD. Nomad Capitalist helps people. If all you want to do is get citizenship through your family tree, we now offer that as a standalone service. It would not be a standalone service for him because he's trying to pair it with tax savings. But we found out, yes, he qualifies for citizenship. And his particular citizenship was Slovak. Okay? Slovakia recently opened up how far back you can go in your family tree. Here's the problem. That's going to take about 2 years to get citizenship. Now, again, he gets Slovak citizenship. 2 years, assuming all the document collection goes well, and we thought, given his case, it would actually be pretty easy. He could, again, renounce U.S. citizenship, and then he can move, not to Slovakia, they do have taxes there, but he can move to any other European Union country, and he could pay not a lot, but something, right? So he could move to Italy and pay 100,000 euros flat. He could move to Greece, make an investment and pay 100,000 euros flat. He could move to Switzerland. He'd get half the tax rate under the lump sum program that he would get as an American because it's a better deal for Europeans who go to Switzerland, but he's still going to pay something. But he can also move to Dubai, again, any of the zero tax, territorial tax, tax-exempt countries. So theoretically, if his goal, as he said, I don't want to pay anything, he can get Slovak citizenship and pay 0. He can also move, okay? And so if he doesn't want to wait these 2 years, he can say, listen, I don't want to pay CBI. I could simply move somewhere else. He could simply get a residence permit in Portugal, for example, or Italy, or Greece. He's going to wait, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, right? And so let's say he takes the cheapest route, goes to Portugal. He's going to pay at least, as an American under this system, about 10% probably by the time he sets up his company in a jurisdiction that's friendly for Portugal, because Portugal won't allow you to live there, even under their tax incentive, and have your company in the UAE or the BVI or the Cayman Islands. You can't do it. You're going to pay close to, as an American, about 10%, somewhere in that range, give or take. So now he's paying $200K a year, and he's going to wait at least 6 years to get this passport, okay? So for someone who just doesn't want to pay anything, this option, and let's say you don't have the citizenship by descent as he has, This option, you're paying $200,000. Now let's put this out. How long is this going to be over time? So before you get a passport and you can bail, 1.2 million at least, assuming bureaucracy moves smoothly. That's after 6 years, which we've listed up here. CBD, you're still going to pay something. Let's just call it the same $200,000 a year for 2 years before you can get out of the U.S. Now you're paying $400,000, right? Because as an American, in his particular business, he's going to have to pay something, even if he goes to live in the UAE. He gets the foreign income exclusion, he gets certain, deferral, but he's going to pay something. In his situation, about $400,000 would be the best he would do over the course of 2 years while he waits for the Slovak passport. In CBI, he is going to pay, depending on where he lives, we could get this down to about 6 months of that. If he wants to move immediately and process his CBI application from overseas, maybe he'll pay about $100K. And so again, he's out here in 6 months. He's out here again in 2 years, okay? And obviously if he stays in the US, he just pays $700,000 every single year. And by the way, are you growing your business if you're paying this much in tax? Imagine if you put that money back into the business, what you would do, okay? Because they're not making as good of use of it as you are. So moving, going to be negligible costs, okay? If you come to Nomad Capitalist, we're going to offer a more premium service where we're handling moving you out of the U.S., getting the U.S. tax preparers, U.S. tax attorney, making sure you have proper memoranda, making sure we're reducing the U.S. tax as much as possible, helping you move to Portugal or Italy or Greece or Dubai, whatever else, setting up your company. Like we're going to do the whole kit and caboodle, general contractor, managing 5 or 6 different guys under one roof, one-stop shop. So I don't know, let's say that just the actual immigration component of moving to some country overseas, let's call that, let's just call it the retainer, $25,000. Okay, so now your total cost here, I went to public school, I think I'm doing that correctly. And so, still pretty close to the 1.2 million in tax, and you've got 6 years of tax hassle, and so figure out what it's going to cost to have, a tax preparer. You could probably just, call it another 50 grand over the next 6 years for, extra tax costs of having a more complex structure. Not the end of the world to go from 700,000 to 200,000. Hey, I'll take it. I'll pay an extra 10 grand a year in tax prep, right? But you're close to 1.3 million here. Citizenship by descent, okay? This is assuming he's going to make a move, right? So he's not just waiting in the U.S. for citizenship by descent. So he's going to pay the same 25K to make a move somewhere. He's going to pay for us, it's like 10 grand or something for us to collect all the documents and do all the schlepping behind the scenes to get the actual CBD. And so standalone for one person, you might be looking at something like that. You could pay less, you could pay more somewhere else, but he's making $2 million. He doesn't want to screw around. So he's going to pay $435,000. And then again, let's just call that again, $455,000 for the 2 years of extra tax prep. Because again, in both of these situations, he's moving to some, low or zero tax country and just, he's topping up a little bit of tax in the United States. So, he's still in the U.S. system, okay? Now, he's doing the same thing here in the CBI. You probably still want to structure your company offshore for when you're leaving, okay? And so I'm not including the company structuring in here. But let's just, again, put the same $25,000 in there for the immigration. In this case, you would say, hey, I'm going to be a CBI citizen. I'm going to be St. Lucian or Dominican, maybe is two of the cheapest ones, or you can spend a little bit more for a little bit better quality passport. They're all somewhat similar. But he could say, listen, once I get that, I want to move to the UAE, okay? And so I'm going to get my residence permit in the UAE now. I'm going to set up my company in the UAE. I'm not going to move my business, perhaps, entirely right away, but I'm going to structure it to where I can still reduce my taxes. And then I'll just move my residence permit in the UAE over to my new passport when I get it, okay? So now I'm paying the $100,000 in tax, I'm paying the $25,000 here, and I'm gonna buy a passport for 100 grand, plus let's add all the extra document collection fees, what have you. Let's just call it 150 grand. Let's just be aggressive, because there are a lot of documents to collect when you're doing this. So now you're paying for a passport. You're paying $150,000 donation plus processing fees, plus bank fees, plus lawyers, plus, if we're gonna help you, we're gonna probably get it done 6 months, 5-6 months. I hear people who just go to random island lawyers. I talked to someone recently, 15 months it took them. Okay, so I'll come back to that in a second. So all in on this strategy, you're paying $275,000. And so you can see you're $1 million less than moving, you're $180,000 less than waiting for citizenship by descent. And by the way, citizenship by investment, you are paying them. Some islands are faster than others. We're always aware of where the backlogs are at any given time. Citizenship by descent for the family tree, they might stretch that out to 3 years, right? 3 years, now you're like at $665,000 because, hey, we were slow. I mean, even some of the more efficient ones during the pandemic just said, hey, we're stopping. During the pandemic, the citizenship by investment ones sped up. They got digital, they got smart because they were getting more people applying. They had to, right? So this one is not so certain. If you work with something like Nomad Capitalist, where we're moving the paperwork process along and threading the needle, as I call it, you can pretty much rely on this timeline. Sometimes there's a few things that you can't get and it takes a little longer, but I will tell you, you're probably gonna get it done in 6 months. So, did you really pay for this citizenship to speed things up? I do hear from people who say it took me a year, for example, to get passports. And obviously those are the outliers for us. We do have some of those where just someone won't get their fingerprints done, for example, or there's some weird situation in their case. But generally speaking, 6 months is the timeline. If you were to work, you say, oh, well, why do I need Nomad Capitalist? I mean, they're a wee bit more expensive because they give me this tax advice I don't need. I mean, it could cost you an extra $100,000 in this 6 months of taxes because you chose to work with the lawyer on the island, but you're still cheaper. So someone who comes in and says, I do not want to be a U.S. citizen anymore because I'm tired of paying this. Yes, I could move overseas and I could just pay this. That's good enough for many people. We help people do that all the time. I do not want to tell you to give up your citizenship if you don't want to do it. And again, for me, it was much more personal than just, I don't want to pay. But for this guy, even though you're quote unquote wasting $150,000 on a citizenship, you can do that in parallel to getting this one, right? And so you can say, today I'm American. In 6 months, I'm going to be, Dominican. And then in 2-3 years, whenever they get around to it, I'm going to be Slovak, okay? In 6 months, I'm gone. And so now I'm Dominican. Most countries don't care. They're going to give me a residence permit because I invest, because I start a company, because I have enough money, whatever the reason for the residence permit is. They're generally not going to discriminate against me for being Dominican. In fact, in many countries, residence permits gotten as Dominican are easier. But he's going to apply in parallel for the residence while he's a U.S. citizen, and then we're going to switch the residence later to, let's say, Dominica, St. Lucia, whatever the passport of his choice is. So now, for a time being, he's only this. He starts off only this, then he gets rid of this, then he goes to only this. In the meantime, this case is processing. Now, we made it to provide them with updated documents that, okay, now he's also Dominican, and in some cases you don't even have to. But eventually we're going to get this one to come in. So now he's going to be eventually, in 3 years, Dominican and Slovak. However, well, why not just wait for this one if you're going to get there eventually? Because, hey, if you have this one, what value does this add? Well, number one, there's a small chance that the EU in some point in the future might say, hey, if you live in a tax-free jurisdiction, we don't want our citizens to do that. Pay us the top up. And now you're back in the same situation. I'd say it's rather unlikely, but it's a risk. Why not be protected while you're making the money to pay for it? However, again, you are getting yourself not only that backup plan for free, you're getting paid as much as $350,000 to do that because it speeds up the case. And so if you're saying, I want to save money, sometimes getting that residence or getting that citizenship faster and paying a little bit of extra, even if you have one already on the way, will actually save you a lot more in the long run. So you shouldn't think of yourself as a sucker, as he mentioned to me. You should think of yourself as, I'm saving myself a lot of money by getting the job done faster, and I've got a free backup plan in my pocket when it's all done.